Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Walking Digital Corridors podcast. Today we're going to take a slightly different approach and identify how a social selling approach can work in alignment with your sales methodology or the sales methodology in which you believe. Today we're covering off Challenger. I'm joined by my co-host Alex Abbott, who's been promoted from a guest because he's now part of the furniture. I'm Jordan Abbott, your host, B2B social influence and interaction advisor at Supero. Alex, would you like to say a few words?
Yep. Hi. Thank you again for having me, and I feel extremely honoured to have been promoted to co-host. So my name is Alex Abbott, the founder of Supero, and we are a B2B sales consultancy that focuses on social selling and influence and value creation and alignment of that value.
Perfect. So I guess initially I'd love to get your definition of what social selling is and what role it plays in the sales process, because I know it's one of those terms or approaches that to many different people has many different meanings. So how would you summarize it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like it's more of a conversation though. If I think about an example recently, as you know, we've been on this social selling and influence journey for just over a year now, and there are certainly vast differences in the level you can attain doing this. It's like sales. Social selling isn't just one thing. It's not taking an analog approach and applying it to social media. It's a methodology that takes time to master, and I feel like we've now mastered it. And when you ask the question, how do you define it? I think one recent example comes to mind when when someone asks me for a call, and we join that call, and they tell me how great my content is, and the fact that they would like to buy our services. And so, it's getting to a point where you are, you've developed your personal brand, kind of deep enough. You've developed your personal brand over time. You have, updated your socials so that your passive profile, anyone visiting your profile, that kind of passive profile, they read it and come to the conclusion that you want them to. You're acting and behaving in a way that is clear to those that you're targeting, that you're an expert at what you do, and you're also a genuine human being worth having a conversation with. You're creating content consistently that makes you stand out and look different from the rest, and you're growing your network and activating your network with a sense of purpose. And I don't mean selling and throwing insight at people. I mean developing relationships with people and being curious. And it's all of those things. And when you do all of those things really well over time, that's for me when the magic really happens. And we get the example that we had this week where someone says, I'd like to buy from you. I've been following you for 3 or 4 months, and what you're saying resonates with me so much. Can you help me?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think there's two things that make me feel sort of really warm and fuzzy inside. The first is when I get on a call and someone says, the first being when I get on a call and someone says, oh, it feels like I already know you. Because of the content I've been sharing, and then the other is similarly to I'd like to buy from you. It's when someone says, look, I want to find a way that we can work together. And I think that's what it is. I think it's rather than treating our prospects as an audience, it's building this community that's really collaborative, that's engaged, and you go on this symbiotic journey with people rather than you sort of dictating what has to be done. So that leads quite nicely on to my next question. There are a whole load of misconceptions because it's obviously there's not one definitive definition of social selling. That's obviously led to some misconceptions about what social selling is. I know for me the two main ones that I get is initially that social selling is this silver bullet to generating unlimited inbound, which it isn't, but obviously the more social activities you do, the more likely you are to be in the right place at the right time, sharing the right story so that you do generate that inbound. And then the second, I think, is summarised quite nicely by sort of paraphrasing the first rule of Fight Club. The first rule of social selling is not to sell on social, right? Mm. So how do you overcome those misconceptions?
Wow. I think I think there's you've really got to just do it. The things that I spoke about a moment ago, developing your personal brand, creating content, connecting with people, engaging with content. They're things that until you start doing them, you won't feel the success from them. And it's when you feel the success from them, those small little wins, like, oh, someone's dropped a like, oh, someone's made a comment, oh, someone's shared my content, oh, someone's asked me a question. It's all those little wins confirming that what you're doing is the right thing, and it builds over time. It really nicely builds over time, and you learn what works and what doesn't work. And what doesn't work is when you sell, when you send a message that's full of insight hoping someone will bite, or when you share your corporate brochure and you kind of wonder why there's no engagement. People, there's a degree of kind of psychology about it, right? It's if you're curious and you are genuine about wanting to build a relationship with someone, and you're not selling, then you kind of put yourself into a position where you're sort of more likely to put yourself into a position where you have a conversation, and it's the conversation that will lead somewhere, or it won't. And if it's clear about what you do on your profile, then the expectation's already set. And I think the harder you try and sell, the less successful you are at it. Yeah,
it's a great point. I think what is incredible about social, or as I see it, is that it is all very much connected and does have a multiplicative effect on the next action, right? And multiplicative is one of my favourite words. You'll come to learn that. But I think salespeople, we've almost kidded ourselves by trying to achieve this mythical or almost mythical omni-channel prospecting approach where everything's connected. But realistically, each of those actions are single actions that don't have any positive impact on the next action having a positive outcome, or at least I think the operative word there being positive. The more times you call someone, the more times you spam someone with email, you're basically notifying this person that they don't want to speak to you, essentially. And I think there's a quote that quite nicely summarises what we've just said, that one of our clients shared with us. Would you like to share it?
last Friday that
Yeah,
I've achieved more working with you in 4 weeks than I have in the previous 4 months. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Having
exactly.
secured sort
Okay,
of
cool.
two, I think there's a bit of a delay, but yeah, having secured two meetings within 4 weeks, C level meetings, compared to one in 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Okay, so now if we switch our focus to the Challenger sale,
Hmm.
right? The Challenger sale was the first book that you gave me when I told you that I wanted to pursue a career in sales, and it became a bit of a bible. And I know it's something that you're very familiar with, and you encouraged your teams to follow the methodology. So I guess, how does the Challenger sales methodology differ from other methodologies?
Yeah. So I guess it's worth noting, I've been formally trained on Miller Heiman. I've been formally trained on Challenger by the CEB, both as a rep and a leader. And the other sales methodologies I've read about. So I've either had people in my team that have been formally trained on other methodologies, or I've just taken the time to learn about them. So I would say, from what I know, and that's 23 years B2B sales experience. Challenger for me isn't necessarily a methodology. I would say it's an approach, and I would say Challenger and the key principles of Challenger complement other sales methodologies. And I say that because, having sort of been formally trained on Miller Heiman in the early 2000s, there are techniques that have stuck with me even to this day based on that framework. And for those that know Miller Heiman, they'll know about the blue sheets and they'll know about the green sheets. But in terms of the structure, how to think about an account and how to think about stakeholders and their relationship with one another, how to align individual objectives, pains, and how they relate to other people within the organisation is what I took from Miller Heiman. And the one thing that really stuck with me about that was the plus or minus. And so within Miller Heiman, on the blue sheet, the centre of the blue sheet, you would have this scale of +10 and -10. And if you were in the plus, you were feeling too good about the deal, right? It was kind of this quick view. You were feeling too good about the deal, and that wasn't necessarily a good thing. So if you're feeling too good about the deal, you're missing something. Or and so you would stick a little dumbbell, right? There's you need to focus on that. Or if you were in the minus, you would then, there's something wrong. You need to address it. Where is it? Is it a stakeholder? Is it that's not supporting the conversations? Do you not have a full org map of the decision making unit that are all influencing the decision, for example? And so, I took some key things from that, and when I learned Challenger in kind of 2010-11, there were a number of things within Challenger that, as a successful salesperson, helped me put names on things. And then by really learning Challenger and putting it into practice, understanding the importance of teaching, tailoring, and taking control, I was able to apply that on top of my strategic selling approach, Miller Heiman approach. So, you asked me how does it differ. I think for me, and the learning journey I went through with Challenger gave me real depth in understanding the importance of teaching someone a new perspective, and how much effort is required to do that successfully. It also taught me how to coach buyers through the complex buying journey and really appreciate the challenge that buyers have when buying. And it also taught me the importance of defining purchase criteria. You help the buyer by defining the purchase criteria, because quite often the buyer has defined purchase criteria, but it's based on some gap analysis that they've done or their IT team has done, and it's actually not reflective of really moving the needle in terms of business performance. And so, you can teach your buyer about how to define their purchase criteria effectively, and link how that will help them do their job better, how it will help the business actually grow, and then helping them shape an evaluation so they can compare alternatives, help them build consensus with perhaps folks that are remote that they've never spoken to before, but they need their support to get this purchase decision concluded. They're things that they're just a few key things I took from Challenger that I could then apply to a traditional solution selling approach that I would say helped me be incredibly successful both as a sales rep and a sales leader.
Yeah, it's a great point. It sounds as though it's more of that sort of symbiotic process that you're going on with the buyer. So something that, perhaps a reservation that has been present in some conversations that I've had with salespeople and leaders is, with the drastic changes in buyer behaviours, is Challenger still relevant?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So if you think about any given territory, right? There's three to, depending on the research you believe, but certainly from experience, between 3 and 5% of any given territory is in market for the solution that you have for the problem that you solve. But there's 95% of the territory that doesn't yet have a need, or at least they don't know they have a need or a problem worth solving. And so Challenger is really good when you're in that 3 to 5%. I think we used to use insight a lot using Challenger. So we would create commercial insight and we would use that to develop pipeline, open doors. But I think buyers have become numb to that. Everybody's now sharing insight to try and open doors. And so buyers have become numb to that. So it's very difficult to use that as a mechanism or as a tool to generate new pipeline. So I think Challenger is incredibly effective in that 3 to 5%, but it does require a lot of judgment, individual judgment based on experience about how you deploy it, right? So I've heard negative connotations around using the term taking control because of the complexity that exists within the buyer journey today. It's not necessarily, taking control, but you're helping guide your buyer through the complexity by creating a framework, an approach that will help them navigate those complexities. And maybe we don't call it taking control anymore, we call it guiding. Because ultimately what we're working towards is a is a commercial outcome that benefits both parties. Partnership. And then, yeah, just kind of rounding off the other point I was making about that 95%. I think, for me, social selling and influence, our methodology for social selling and influence and Challenger really work in harmony, hand in glove.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, how can social selling be integrated with a Challenger sales approach to help drive those commercial outcomes, or mutually beneficial commercial outcomes, right? Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, if you simplify the sales process, you've got prospecting, deal management, and closing, right? So I think where Challenger is less effective is in the prospecting bucket of those three. Very effective in terms of that kind of deal management, deal creation, deal management, and closing. And social selling and influence heavily focuses on prospecting, but it's incredibly powerful across all three, which is why it's kind of for me, it's the two halves. It completes the full the full picture. Excuse me. So I think they work hand in hand.
Yeah, certainly. I just want to touch on something that was a bit of a mantra for me that you passed down, which was earning the right. As you mentioned, Challenger perhaps isn't as strong in the prospecting section in the current landscape because that insight has almost become saturated. That insight-led approach, I should say, has become sort of saturated, diluted, because everyone's doing it. And look, insight is an incredibly powerful tool, right?
I should probably
I'm not disputing that.
Yeah, I should probably add, Jordan, sorry to interrupt you, but I guess let me clarify what I mean by that. By Challenger being less effective as to generate pipeline. I think what I mean by that, there's going to be a subtle kind of difference here. So it's using insight, I think, in the non-traditional sense. So I think insight is still incredibly important to help open doors, but it needs to come from the individual, not from the business. So if I think about the example that I gave earlier in the conversation about social selling having an impact and someone walking towards me and saying, I'd like to buy, they've consumed my insight over time, right? But it's a slightly different mindset. It's creating insight that is well targeted, but it's not being pushed in their face. We're not saying, I'm going to teach you right now. We're saying, I'm creating this stuff that's part of me, and I can help my target audience. And it's not, and the difference is, it's not coming from the marketing team saying, right, we're trying to generate demand. Here's lots of insight. We're going to educate the market. I think it's that people have kind of zoned out of. And it's blending that insight with the human approach, with that genuine, authentic human approach that I think is so powerful.
Yeah, exactly that. And as I was mentioning, it's about earning the right to be able to share the insight with someone. Just sharing the insight, it's likely just going to fall on deaf ears. You have to have that relationship first, this sort of mutual, reciprocal relationship to be able to go on that journey of realising the value that the insight is bringing about.
Yeah, and it's a good point. So you're creating content, and it's a combination of insight and human-based content that encourages the buyer to walk towards you if you're doing it well. And it's it's at that point that you're having the conversation and you're building rapport, you start to develop a relationship. That's when you're earning the right to teach someone a different perspective. If you try teaching them too early, you'll be faced with resistance.
Yeah, indeed. Brilliant. So I think we've covered quite a few different topics there. Are there any sort of summarising thoughts?
I would say so. With all of this stuff being sales methodologies, I've found that since leaving the corporate world, I've had a more open mind to learning about different sales methodologies and what's working and what isn't working. And even if I think about some of the other training programs I've been on and books that I've read, I've sort of formed this approach that is a blend of lots of different methodologies. And I think many companies and no doubt many listeners may not have the luxury of being formally trained on a specific methodology. And really, my experience, for these methodologies to work, it needs to be a core part of the culture within a sales and marketing team, within an organisation. And so, I would say to anyone, curious about listening to this podcast, that be curious about these methodologies and learn about them with an open mind, and figure out how they can help you be more effective, more successful as a salesperson. Unless you're in a position where you're being formally trained, and that methodology is a core part of the culture and aligned across the business.
Yeah, no, fantastic, brilliant. So I think we'll wrap it up there. I'm looking forward to our next session. We're going to be tackling whether it's best to have an in-house SDR function or whether to outsource it. I think that's going to be quite a juicy conversation. Alex, thank you very much for joining me yet again, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you, Jordan. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the promotion. I hope I didn't let you down as co-host.
Not at all. Brilliant. Have a great day.